Ladies and gentlemen, there was a time when movie stars weren't just actors. They were legends, icons, larger than life. They carried the weight of dreams on their shoulders and made the impossible seem effortless. They weren't just performers on the silver screen. They were the heartbeat of Hollywood. The classic Hollywood star didn't just act, they transformed. They lived 1,000 lives in front of the camera, giving everything to the craft. They weren't in it for the fame, the fortune, or the flashing lights. No, their passion ran deeper. It was about storytelling, about emotion, about leaving a mark that would stand the test of time. Think of the timeless ones, their voices, their gestures, the way they could hold a scene with nothing but a look. They were artists who knew that true greatness wasn't about the number of roles, but about the depth of each one. They understood that a performance was not just about entertaining, but about making people feel something real. But here's the truth. Being a star isn't just about talent, it's about resilience. The classic Hollywood star faced rejection, setbacks, and personal struggles. They battled against the odds and refused to let the world define them. They understood that every great story, on screen and off, comes with struggle. And yet, despite it all, they endured. They stayed hungry. They kept pushing, and they never let go of that fire inside them. That is why their legacy lives on. Because in every frame, in every line, in every role, they left behind a piece of themselves, and we still feel it today. So let's not just admire these stars of the past. Let's learn from them. Let's celebrate the art, the dedication, the raw passion that made them unforgettable. Because in the end, the true classic Hollywood star is not just someone who shines under the spotlight, but someone whose light never fades. Hollywood stars were once legends, not just actors. There was a time when stepping onto a movie set meant more than just playing a role. It was an initiation into something grander, something almost mythical. The stars of classic Hollywood weren't just actors memorizing lines and hitting their marks. They were embodiments of a dream, living proof that cinema could capture something larger than life. They carried a presence so magnetic that even the simplest glance, the smallest gesture, held the weight of 1,000 words. Their craft wasn't just about performance. It was about creating a legacy, moment by moment, scene by scene. These stars weren't confined to their roles. They transcended them. Their personalities bled into the culture of their time, shaping fashion, speech, and even the way people moved. When they walked into a room, the air changed. They had an aura that couldn't be faked, a charisma that couldn't be manufactured. They didn't just act on screen, they embodied an ideal, an essence of sophistication, mystery, or rebellion that made them unforgettable. People weren't just watching them, they were mesmerized, drawn in by an ineffable quality that set them apart from mere performers. Unlike today's age of social media and instant accessibility, these legends carried an air of mystery. They weren't constantly explaining themselves, posting updates, or revealing every aspect of their personal lives. They let their work speak for itself. The audience didn't know what they had for breakfast or what their thoughts were on every trending topic. This distance made them even more captivating, turning them into something beyond the ordinary figures that could only be glimpsed through the magic of the movies, never fully known, only imagined. Their dedication to the craft was unmatched. They trained relentlessly, studying movement, diction, and emotion with an intensity that bordered on obsession. They understood that being a star meant more than just raw talent. It required discipline, transformation, and an unwavering commitment to excellence. Many of them came from backgrounds filled with struggle, arriving in Hollywood with nothing but ambition. And yet, through sheer determination and an almost unbreakable will, they became icons. They molded themselves into something extraordinary, proving that greatness wasn't just given, it was earned. What made these stars even more remarkable was their ability to captivate without the aid of modern technology. There were no digital effects to enhance their performances, no CGI to make them larger than life. It was all them. Pure presence, pure skill. They knew how to hold an audience with the subtlest expressions, the smallest movements. A raised eyebrow, a slow turn of the head, a moment of silence. These were their special effects, and they mastered them like sculptors chiseling masterpieces out of stone. More than actors, they were symbols. They represented hope during times of struggle, escapism during times of hardship, and inspiration for generations to come. Whether it was the rebellious spirit of a leading man or the elegant grace of a silver screen siren, these figures shaped the very definition of what it meant to be a star. They weren't just playing roles, they were shaping identities, giving people something to aspire to, something to believe in. They carried the collective imagination of their time, embodying ideals that resonated beyond the screen and into the real world. Their impact was felt far beyond the theaters. They influenced everything from politics to social change, becoming more than entertainers. They became cultural forces. Their voices weren't just heard in dialogue, but echoed in the way people lived their lives. Whether it was a style of dress, a way of speaking, or even the confidence to dream bigger, these stars left imprints on the world that extended far beyond the cinematic universe. They had the power to define an era, to make history through their mere existence. And yet, for all their grandeur, they remained enigmas. The more we watched them, the less we felt we truly knew them. That was part of their magic. They didn't just exist on the screen, they lingered in our minds, in our hearts, and the way we imagined them long after the credits rolled. They weren't just actors, they were legends. They carried the dreams of audiences on their shoulders. Cinema has always been more than just entertainment. It is an escape, a window into different worlds, a place where people can live 1,000 lives in just a few hours. The classic Hollywood star understood this responsibility better than anyone. They weren't merely performing for an audience, they were carrying the weight of people's hopes, dreams, and aspirations on their shoulders. Every role they played was a doorway through which audiences could step away from their realities and immerse themselves in something magical, something extraordinary. For many, these stars were symbols of possibility. They represented a world beyond the mundane, a world where anything could happen. To the struggling worker, they were a vision of success. To the heartbroken, they were a reminder that love could be grand and eternal. To those who felt invisible, they were proof that someone could rise from obscurity and be seen. Their presence on screen wasn't just about telling stories, it was about giving people something to believe in. In the golden age of Hollywood, life was not always easy for the audience. Wars, economic struggles, and personal hardships were everyday realities. And yet, people flocked to theaters, knowing that for a brief moment they could be transported to a place where heroes always triumphed, love conquered all, and dreams could come true. The classic Hollywood star bore the unspoken responsibility of lifting spirits, of being the light in the darkness. They became beacons of hope, figures who reassured people that beauty, adventure, and excitement still existed in the world. They carried this burden with grace, understanding that their fame was not just about personal success, but about the people who adored them. The connection between the stars and their audiences was profound, deeper than the surface-level admiration we see in modern celebrity culture. It was not just about fanfare or box office numbers. It was about trust. When people saw their favorite stars on the screen, they knew they would be taken on an unforgettable journey. They knew that for a few hours they could leave behind their troubles and exist in a world where emotions were grand, stakes were high, and stories had meaning. These stars were also reflections of their audience's deepest desires. They embodied the ideals people longed to see in themselves: the charismatic leading man, the fearless heroine, the tragic yet noble figure. They were not just characters, but representations of something greater. They mirrored the aspirations of their time, showing people who they could be, who they wanted to be. When audiences watched them, they weren't just spectators, they were dreamers, imagining a life filled with the same passion, courage, and elegance they saw on the screen. The weight of these dreams was not always easy to carry. Many classic Hollywood stars faced immense pressure to maintain their image, to remain untouchable, flawless, and eternally inspiring. They knew that they weren't just individuals, they were icons. Their personal struggles, their fears, and their pain had to be hidden away so that the dream they represented would not be shattered. It was a sacrifice, one that many made willingly, knowing that their presence meant something deeply important to those who watched them. Yet, despite this burden, they never faltered. They continued to step into new roles, to push themselves beyond their limits, to give performances that would linger in the hearts of audiences forever. They understood that their craft was not just about self-expression, it was about service. They were giving a piece of themselves to the world, knowing that in return, they would become immortal in the minds of those who loved them. Their work was never just a job, it was a legacy, one that would continue to inspire long after they were gone. Even today, when we look back at those classic Hollywood stars, we see more than just actors. We see dreamweavers, storytellers, and guardians of hope. Their presence continues to remind us of the power of cinema, the way it can lift us up, transport us, and make us believe in something greater. They carried the dreams of audiences then, and in many ways they still do now.